in the A-League. No, no, let's start with Chris Wood in the football department. Because Chris Wood scored another goal. But Nottingham Forest had a loss. They lost to Fulham. I did like Chris Wood's goal, as is the theme for all Chris Wood goals. He scores his goals differently. This time he kind of gets a north-south ball, receives it top of the box, funky touch, little step over, left foot, bottom left, easy mahi. Something seems quite extravagant for Chris Wood, but those are the goals he's scoring these days. But Nottingham Forest did have a loss, so how do you balance Chris Wood scoring his 18th goal in the Premier League this season and Nottingham Forest having a loss?
Well, I reckon that touch was probably an accident. I think it just hits him on the back of the heel, and it's the fact that it sets up for him so perfectly after that. Like he's just trying to run off the defender and get some position there. It kind of hits him in the back of the leg, but drops perfectly for him to be able to chop back onto his left foot, which, like, I guess when your luck's in, your luck's in. And as we know, you make your own luck as well. So he's making a positive run. And as much as this was not a very good Nottingham Forest performance. They were beaten 2-1 by Fulham. Could have frankly been a lot more. Chris Wood scored a goal a little bit out of the blue, and their goalkeeper made a bunch of good saves as well. So Fulham were kind of comfortably the better team. Fulham beat them earlier in the season as well. So I think they've lost 6 games this season. Nottingham Forest only 6 games, and 2 of them against Fulham. So weird how that seems to work. They might just be a little bit of a bogey team. Although I mean they needed penalties to get past Exeter City in the FA Cup midweek, and they did have that thrilling 7-0 win over Brighton before that with Chris Wood scoring the hat-trick. But just before that, they lost 5-0 to Bournemouth. So there might be a little bit of a I don't know, this might just be a little bit of a tricky period for them coming out of the January transfer window, perhaps. I don't know, but yeah, it wasn't a very good team performance. And within that not very good team performance, only one chance fell Chris Wood's way. And it was a little bit of a convenient one. Like he's running one way, ball hits him on the back of the leg. Chris Wood, the form that he's in, he just turns, shoves off his defender, whips it in left foot, slight deflection on the way through, but it takes the deflection he set it up for. He put it around the side of the defender, and the defender couldn't get a full block in, and the slight deflection just takes it a little bit further into the bottom corner to help him score the goal. So almost, it's not quite out of nothing. Like it's Morgan Gibbs-White looking long to get Chris Wood involved. You can't say that's out of nothing because that's their best outlet. If it's not Morgan Gibbs-White, it's Anthony Elanga. Just get the ball to Chris Wood. That's a pretty good option for them. But that's what they did, and it just the seas parted for him somehow. But he thoroughly and convincingly took advantage of a convenient little moment, which did not unfold, I don't think, the way he was expecting it to unfold. Didn't matter. He bounced, he punished, and that is how he's scored 18 goals this season. And he's, like you say, he's scoring them in different ways. He's irrepressible. You can't, even when Nottingham Forest have a bad game, Chris Wood doesn't have a bad game. He still gets one big chance, and he usually scores that one big chance. He's absolutely destroying the very concept of XG this season by how far ahead he is of what he should be based on that. I don't know if he's broken the formula or what. I mean, you might say that he's had a little bit of a fortunate run, and some of these that could have been deflected out in a different season or a different day or whatever. But I mean, you could have said that 3 months into the season with the amount of goals he'd scored at that point, and then another month comes and he keeps scoring goals, and another month and he keeps scoring goals. There doesn't seem to be any sign of stopping here. So I think we're past that point. This is just he's very well entrenched in the old make hay while the sun shines kind of part of his career, which hopefully will last multiple seasons to come. It might only be this one season, but he's making the absolute most of it. And even though Nottingham Forest weren't very good, he still managed to contribute. But they had some luck elsewhere, because I think it was Newcastle and Chelsea both lost this week, which meant that they didn't actually lose much ground, and they stay they stay in third place. They don't really lose much ground to the teams below them. I think Manchester City climbed back up to fourth, so they might have dropped, like they might have lost 1 point on the gap to fourth, but they can still finish fourth and make the Champions League, so that's not a problem. They're trying to get top four, Nottingham Forest there, and so as far as that goes, not a very good day at the office for them, but Chris Wood still scored a goal, and their Champions League hopes weren't dashed too much there. Like they're in as good a position basically as they were before the week as they are now. So they do, however, have a very, 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 very I'll try to get this exact crucial like little spell of games coming up, because I think their next game is against Arsenal. Let me just check the old when did they play? It would have been this day. English Premier League. Fulham 2, Nottingham Forest 1. So next match is actually against Newcastle. So the next game is against Newcastle. That is on the weekend. Then in the midweek, they're away to Arsenal. So 2 teams in and around that Champions League race. Following that, they have an FA Cup 5th rounder. So this is to get, I think this must be last 16 at this point, 5th round. That's to get them into the last 8 of the FA Cup. And following that, they host Manchester City. So potentially their next 4 games could have a lot to do with whether they do finish top 4 or not. Like those are 4 very different, well, not just top 4, but also how well they can go in the cup. Like these are potentially season defining games where if they have a bad run here, they could fall back and they'd still end up with having had a fantastic season, but it won't be quite the ultimate glory that they're hoping for at this stage that they're still dreaming of. After that little run, though, it's mostly teams to go, like most of the teams they face after that are teams in the bottom half of the table where they've been almost flawless at putting those teams to the sword this season. So if they come through this next month, or that's not even a month because there's a midweek game or 2 in there, this next sort of 2-3 weeks of games, they come through this, managed to get a couple wins, balance out they can lose 1 or 2, but win a couple others and balance it out. If they come through it, well, that's all in their own hands from that point onwards, because they'll be playing mostly teams that they've beaten already throughout the season to this point. So, yeah, very, 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 very interesting point of the season coming up for Nottingham Forest. And Chris Wood continues to score goals whether they play well or play not. So whether they play well or whether they play bad. So I don't think that's a point to worry about. But these team performances around him, if they can win some of these games coming up, sky's the limit. Well, Champions League is the limit.
But what's doing with Matt Garbett? Have we got any news on Matt Garbett with NAC Brada?
I don't know. I don't know. They've it's like they told him to leave. They said you're not in the plans moving forward. Look for another club. Which the wording of that, the way that was portrayed, also seemed a bit weird, because it's like, shouldn't you be also, you want a transfer fee for him? Shouldn't you be like participating as the club a lot more in the sale rather than just be like, you go find something else? It seemed like that was the way it was presented, was put a lot on Garbett's shoulders. But yeah, I don't know. There was nothing happened after that for a few weeks, and then there was one report from Netherlands saying actually it's just because he's keeping his cards close to the chest, but he's got several options around Central Europe and beyond, and whatever, he's just waiting for the club that he's picked out to sell a player so that they can bring him in, create room. Well, nothing happened. The transfer deadline in Netherlands passed and Garbett was still with Breda. Other transfer deadlines finish at different times, but like every day that goes by, another one closes and he hasn't signed there. So if he wants to go to like Switzerland or Croatia, join Elijah Just or Stipe Jukic, well, if that doesn't happen in the next 24 hours, it's too late there. China, I think, maybe Russia, like there's a couple of the countries still around. Australia's done. Won't be seeing him in the A-League this season. Maybe he could go join his brother in Ireland or something like that, but he's running out of options. And at this stage, it looks like he might just find himself sitting on the bench, well, not even sitting on the bench, just sitting in the stands watching NAC Breda the rest of the season, training with the under-21s. And if you're doing that, I kind of don't see how you can be selected for the All Whites World Cup qualifiers that are coming up in March. Like, if you're not playing and haven't played since the start of December, I don't see how you can justify being selected for that. So it's a tricky time for him, and I'm not sure exactly what's happening at all.
Is there any other important Flying Kiwis updates from the last few days?
Important. I don't know. It does feel like a little bit. The last 2 weeks actually, it felt like a little bit of a downswing slightly from how incredibly busy the write-ups were before that, while there were also transfers and games going on. Didn't really get any apart from Chris Wood. Didn't really get any goals this week. Did get an assist from Oscar Van Hattem on debut in Ireland though. That was pretty cool. Him joining Sligo Rovers there from the Wellington Phoenix and getting again, I don't think he played 90 minutes, but he started and played most of the game as looked like a right wing back. So he'd been training sort of wing or wing back, and it got the slightly more defensive option in this one, but was whipping in some good crosses, getting up and down the sideline. So that's all nice and encouraging. Moses Dyer also played his first game for Galway in Ireland, so he was on debut in that league too. Didn't score. Had a big chance though. He had one where it sort of fell his way off a corner and he hit it on the swivel, maybe 8-10 yards out or something, and the defender just stuck a leg out and blocked it on the line. So a little bit unlucky there, but good to see him starting games straight away. Both of those two guys going over to Ireland and immediately into starting lineups. So that's cool. I'm sure if Matt Garbett manages to wrangle something there, which I don't think would happen, but if he did, I'm sure he'd absolutely rip it to shreds. But don't know what he's going on, but don't know where he's going to, rather, or whether he's going anywhere. The other option as well, to kind of think of it with Garbett, is because he is a free agent at the end of the season, he could see down his contract. But if Liberato think they can get a transfer fee for him, they have an option to extend his contract for another 12 months, which they might do if they think they can actually, get a little bit of a return on investment there, which could be another hurdle that he would have to surpass. I don't really see him getting back into the first team picture there, but who knows? Who knows what will happen with him? In the meantime, there's plenty of other dudes. I mean, like Libby Cacace's team had another bad loss on the weekend. They've, I think, got 10 games now without a victory in Serie A, so it's not looking good for Empoli. They're only 1 point ahead of the relegation zone as it stands. But the interesting thing about that game was that Cacace played as a centre back. He played the left-sided centre back in a back three. So he's normally a wing back. This game he played centre back. Most of his starts recently have been coming as a left wing. So basically anywhere on the left side of the field, they'll play him. Whatever it takes. They'll play him anywhere on the left side. Unfortunately, they're not getting a lot of victories at the moment. Not scoring a lot of goals either is usually the problem. They lost 3-0 to Udinese, but a couple of those goals were fairly late. It was 1-0 for a long time there, and they certainly had their chances. Like, that could have been a very different game if they'd converted a couple of them. So that's troubling times there, but similar to, well, not similar to Chris Wood. Well, similar to Chris Wood in this week in that his team played bad, but that guy still did all right. In this case, Empoli played bad like that every week, whereas for Nottingham Forest, at least it was an off day. But Cacace is starting pretty much every game these days for them, which is very cool as well. So that's it's not a happy outcome, but at least it's a nice individual aspect of that is how Cacace will just play. They'll pick him in any position they can as long as they can get him out there, except mostly his favorite position. There's someone else starting there instead of him, but they're still managing to weasel ways to get him into the side.
We have the A-League Derby, the Aotearoa Derby this weekend. Auckland FC hosting Wellington Phoenix. As we said earlier in the podcast, Auckland FC had a 2-0 win over Western United. And it's pretty ridiculous at this stage just how good Auckland FC is, because my favourite A-League wrinkle is the goals conceded. Auckland FC currently on 12 goals conceded. There are 2 other teams who have conceded less than 20 goals. One of them is Melbourne City on 15. Very good. The other is the Wellington Phoenix on 19. So 2 of the 3 teams in the A-League who have conceded less than 20 goals this season are the Aotearoa teams, Auckland FC and Wellington Phoenix FC, because they're all FC. So why do we need to say Auckland FC? Can we just say, let's just say Auckland. I agree with you. Black Knights, whip-de-doo-dah. Although I have been listening to audiobook Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Rings. Ring, the One Ring. Singular, not plural.
The One Ring to rule them all.
The One Ring to
That
rule
one.
them. But there's no Fellowship of the Rings. There's only a Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, only one of the
And
rings got a fellowship. That's true.
when I hear Black Knights, I'm like, whoa, fresh after listening to Lord of the Rings. You know, the Black Riders. Although they are a bit creepy, they do got that kind of Dementor, cold, icy darkness to them. But Black Riders, because then I ride or die, you know? I'm a rough rider, I'm a Black Rider, ride or die. That just seems a whole lot cooler than the Black Knights. Because they don't wear black, so I don't even know where the Black Riders comes from. But they ride. That's what they do. They ride. Everyone in the port, they ride. So maybe Black Riders. I'm gonna push the Black Riders agenda for Auckland FC, who are awesome. And I still feel like it's kind of understated how awesome Auckland FC is. Unless you're a Wellington Phoenix fan, and you probably don't like Auckland, the Black Riders. So you're like, yeah, whatever. They're not underrated. They're overrated. They're all jack shit. They're not doing nothing. But they are doing something because they're top of the A-League, and this weekend they are hosting Wellington Phoenix. What's top of mind for you heading into this game? Like early week, it's Tuesday night, Wednesday morning by the time you're listening to this. Set us up for some storylines that you're thinking about between the Black Riders and the Phoenix Rising.
Well, Adelaide United have lost 2 of their last 3 games, so Auckland are now 5 points clear at the top of the table with the same amount of games played as Adelaide, and actually one less game played than Melbourne Victory, who are third, and they're a further 3 points behind, so they're 8 points ahead of them. Like they're not just hanging around at the top there; they're actually putting distance between them and everyone else now. Like they're expanding their lead. And this game on the weekend was different in that they scored their goals late in the first half, but I kind of think that's the same thing. Like we're used to seeing them grind out teams and then score late goals in second halves, but I remember looking at the goals, like when they were scoring their goals, and it was a couple of weeks ago when I wrote about them, and there was a little bit of a flurry towards the end of first halves as well. And here was another bit of evidence towards that against the Western United team, who, you remember, beat them 4-0 at Mount Smart Stadium like 2 months ago or something like that. It was the one the one game where Auckland FC just didn't seem to turn up at all. It was the one game where they played extremely poorly. Here they were playing that team again, but at their home, which kind of just looked like a training pitch. Like it was it's smaller than Pororoa Park, so I don't know how the A-League stuff is getting these. And the coverage started as well with like a pan from all the cars trying to get into the very small parking lot above the pitch as well. So these are glamorous A-League scenes here. Well, the other factor as well, before I forget this, like they didn't have Louis Estrada either. Like Louis Estrada was out with his yellow card suspension. He missed this game. He got his 5th yellow last week. Couldn't play this one. So there goes your best defensive midfielder, one of the guys who's been one of their most influential players to what they've achieved so far. Against a team that thrashed you last time you played them, away from home this time, and they produced they produced another one of the type of performances that they always seem to do. And this time it was late goals in the first half. Guillermo Maia with a banger from distance. Weirdly, like 2 minutes before he scored that goal, which was a bit of a rocket along the ground, bouncing just in front, but with his left foot from distance. Just before that, he tried to go on a run and then he went to shoot. He was off balance with his left and he missed. And the commentator said, "Well, I guess he doesn't have a left foot." I'm like, well, he's a left-footed player. You know, he just fell over because he was off balance, not because he doesn't know how to kick with his left foot. 2 minutes later, he scores a banger from distance. So I guess he does have a left foot after all. And then Max Mata finishing 1-0 with I thought that was really smart from Nader Moreno, the way he first of all, I wasn't even until I had to watch it a couple of times to even see how he managed to get the square ball. It looked like he was going the wrong way and was just going to be forced to shoot off the other foot. Somehow he managed to stab it through a defender to find Max Mata open in the middle for a tap-in. I thought that was a really nice worked goal as well, and good awareness there to set it up from Moreno and Max Mata just being in the right place like a good striker does. Um, and they hit them late in the half. Like that's usually late in the second half, but there have been other games like this where they hit teams late in the first half. They seem like they're probably fitter than most teams. They seem to just be able to outlast, and then when you get tired against them, whether it's late in the first half, late in the second half, that's when you're most vulnerable against a team like the even Black Riders doesn't quite seem right because they still don't wear black. Like maybe they should be the Blue Knights or the Blue Riders or I don't know.
I was thinking about that, but then it gets a bit iffy with the local politics. You know, you got your blues, your reds.
Right.
You don't want to inflame any of the whether it's the half Pakeha, half Palangi Crip gang, or the Blood gang, or the other Crips and the Bloods, the blues and the reds and the yellows and the greens and whatnot. You do got to be careful, but there's nothing black about Auckland. And traditionally,
No.
Auckland's colours are blue.
Yeah.
Blue and white. So, let's be honest, the professional football team shouldn't be worried about, local gang colours. It seems a bit ridiculous, and that's just my weird brain. But Blue Riders does have a bit of a swag to it. Blue Riders.
Yeah, and it does it's a bit of uniqueness to that probably. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if it takes off. But yeah, they're playing superbly, and in a way where because that game was pretty evenly balanced for most of that game. Most of that first half, pretty much all the second half, it was difficult to split the two teams other than being able to say once Auckland had scored those goals. Well, first of all, they had that spell where they scored a couple goals. They didn't just capitalize once, they capitalized twice and really took control of the game. And then the way they managed it from that point onwards, which included, they don't have the Tommy Smith sub anymore to bring on the closer, chuck in an extra centre back. So what they did is they brought on Callan Elliott. I think it was in place of Logan Rogerson. So in place of a winger, bring on Callan Elliott to play wing back and slide Hiroki Sakai, who I noticed, just got the Auckland FC. I realize they don't do a lot as good. They don't actually necessarily put all their updates up on their website for some reason. They're kind of slack with that, but they do have a mailing list. So I signed up to the mailing list 3 months too late the other day. So just before while we were recording, got an email saying Hiroki Sakai signed a 1-year extension. So that's pretty great because I thought he was brilliant against Western United, as he's very often brilliant in these games for the Blue Riders. Make sure I got the right color there. I nearly hesitated. And yeah, when you play the way that they do, able to control games the way that they do, it's really especially able to defend as well as they do, and able to pick on the vulnerabilities of your opponent as well as they do. A little bit worried for how the Wellington Phoenix are going to shape up against that on the weekend in Auckland as well. So at Mount Smart Stadium, which is another thing that goes against them potentially. They'll be fired up for it. And I thought the Phoenix, even though they had a disappointing loss on the weekend, gone down 1-0, another one of them away losses, where it's I was sitting there watching it thinking what this team needs is a Portuguese playmaker. At least they've got one of those on the way, because watching them, knowing that they've got old Chico on the way to fill that void in the team, watching them with that knowledge, knowing that he wasn't playing this game, it's just a bit too soon for him, it was glaring, the way in which they're unable to just link up from midfield to attack, and even frankly getting from defense to midfield a lot of the times they struggled with. But when Alex Rufer came on for the last, I can't remember how much he played, 20, 30 minutes or something like that, when he came off the bench, you wouldn't think that chucking on a defensive midfielder would unlock your attack, but it kind of did. Because it did a couple of things for them. First of all, he is always an option for the defense. So the defense aren't going sideways and then up the sideline and then back and then across and then up and back and across. He's actually someone in the middle who drops in, collects the ball, is strong enough that he will hold off the guy who's pressing him. So he's press resistant, I think is the phrase they like to use these days. He's press resistant. He won't lose the ball in those situations, which exposes the defense. That's not happening. And he's able to turn on it and then find one of your other midfielders, and then you are advancing the ball through the middle where you've got more space to work with. That helps. He does have passing range too, so he can lob one over the top. It's not always accurate, but it's often pretty good. He's got he's got a decent long ball on him there. And then the other thing is because he wins the ball so well, a lot of their counterattacks can begin through Alex Rufa's good work. Like he steps in, he wins the ball, he lays it off, the Phoenix are on attack. Well, if no one was winning that tackle before, that attack never happens, right? So I think there was a few of those ones too, where it was like just having his presence there, let alone the fact that he's the captain of the team, also pretty important. Just having one of your best leaders out there. They looked a much better team when he was on there. It wasn't for long enough that they were able to get back into that game and get anything out of it, but you can see what they're building towards. And you can also see the way in which Chico Heraldez is going to certainly help what they're... well, I mean, you can see there's just been a Marco Rojas-shaped hole for most of the season, which Heraldez is hopefully going to fill. But at the same time, we also know there's a team full of a lot of youngsters. They will make 1 or 2 mistakes per game. I know why they lost this one on the weekend as well. And they're trying to embed a new import. They've got a couple of key players who are coming back from injury. They're at least back now, but they're still probably not 100% fitness. And Auckland FC, you don't need many chinks in the armor for them to be able to find something that they can target. And then when they target it, they usually get a goal out of it. And when they get a goal out of it, well, they usually keep a clean sheet as well. So that's probably all it's going to take for them to win. So this is... of the 3 games that we've seen so far, and Auckland FC did win the other 2 as well, this feels like the one which is the most skewed towards one team or the other. And it's just the way Auckland have been tracking, the way the Phoenix have been tracking, even though the Phoenix have picked up their defensive record a lot recently, I just don't know if they've done it enough to be able to take down the Blue Rider juggernaut.
Any ideas on, like, we got the Blue Riders, they're taking on the Phoenix. Who are the Phoenix?
A yellow something.
For some reason, Bandits came to mind. Like, I don't think
Bandits.
they are.
They sort of play a bit, and there's a bit of banditry to how they play. You know, the kind of sit back, soak it up, and then sneak in through the side door and then steal something. You know, snatch and grab kind of performances where they'll score a goal on the counterattack after soaking up a bunch of pressure. There's something in there, maybe.
Costa Barbarousis, Numero Tahi bandit. I mean, Alex Rufa is a quintessential bandit. He is a bandit through and through. T-Pain. They don't get any more bandito than T-Pain.
Oh.
So shout out to the Yellow Bandits. Wellington Phoenix women, the female banditos, they played in Australia, so they lost. They had a 2-1 loss to Perth Glory. You went deep into this for our newsletter about the disparity in records between Australia and Aotearoa. In Aotearoa, 6 games, 4 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. In Australia, 10 games, 2 wins, 1 draw, 7 losses. So let me check where the Wellington Phoenix are playing this weekend. They are playing at Porirua Park, the best stadium in Wellington. Let's go with that. Well, second best, because you got the Basin Reserve. Respect to the Basin Reserve. Forgive me, slipped my mind. Shout out to the Basin Reserve, best stadium in Wellington. Shout out to Porirua Park, second best stadium in Wellington. Wellington Phoenix versus Adelaide United. Wellington Phoenix still chasing finals footy. They're in 8th. 4 points out of the top 6. And Adelaide are pretty good. They're 3rd on 30 points. So this will be a...
Is that this weekend? Because there's a football phones thing coming up. So I don't know if they have international breaks here or not.
You got me again. It's next weekend. So we'll chill out on that.
Right.
But do you
have... Well, they got a week off to figure it out.
Do you have any words about the Wellington Phoenix losing in Australia? To me, it's not that interesting. I don't know the solutions. I don't know why it happens. I'd say it does remind me of like Junior Warriors stuff. Under 19s SG Ball, under 17 Harold Matthews. The reason I don't care about their results is because you got young men traveling to Australia to play every second week. Like, they're going to school, most of them. and then they're playing in Australia on the weekend. And it's all right to do that at one game. To do that every second week for 6 to 8 weeks is pretty difficult to get up. You know, you're playing rugby league, it's a tough game. So I don't follow the results too much because of that travel factor. The good thing is there's something they don't have in football. They're instilling that at an earlier age, that process, that professionalism that I think is very important, because you look at a team like the Wellington Phoenix women or some of those young players for the Wellington Phoenix men, they're playing in Australia every second week. It's very difficult to be consistent with that travel schedule as a youngster experiencing it for the first time. I'd say that's why Chiefy makes sure that he's got a couple of youngsters in the traveling party every game. So they do go to Australia. They do get the game day preparation, the recovery, all that stuff. And I'd say that's why Auckland FC, the Blue Riders, why they're pretty good already, because there's a lot of professionals there. There's a lot of dudes who have played professional football around the world who are used to that weekly flow. Of course, the Wellington Phoenix women, they're a professional team. Or I think we might still be at quasi-professional for them, respect to the females.
Professional in terms of like football expectations, probably not as professional as it should be in terms of money in your pocket, if that line makes sense.
And general human rights.
And general, yeah.
It just seems important.
Yeah, well, like, not enough money to be a full-time job, but also they take up so much time that it's very hard to have a full-time job. Work that one out, ladies.
Well, you're telling us. You're telling me. You're telling yourself. We know that all too well. So the Wellington Phoenix, like, I don't know what the solution is other than experience and grinding through this period, but they can still be a good A-League team if they win all their home games. And their next game will be a home game. So how do you, like, if the Wellington Phoenix women are a team who are dominant at home and plucky in Australia, I think it's a pretty good team. They just need to decrease the gap between the extremes they're dealing in right now.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's a very good point, I think, about the not just how tricky it is to do the like international travel for an away trip stuff, but also the way in which, at least in the NRL, yeah, you have those lower grades where you start to learn at least that rhythm of it. Whereas in the A-League, there's not really even any way for the Phoenix youngsters to compare that to. I mean, the toughest thing they get is traveling from Wellington to Auckland or Christchurch in the National League or something. Like, it's not the same thing. That's a day trip, you know? So there is, it's a tricky one to get a handle on. It's difficult to get used to that. But as you say, they're a professional team with professional expectations, and the frustrating thing about it is they had this problem last year as well. It's just, they were the same team last year. They're really good at home, kept losing. And it's not like they're being thrashed either. It's they keep losing by one goal. These 1-0, 2-1 margins in the away games, where they're so close. If they're getting points, like if they're getting 0-0, 1-0, 2-2 draws out of some of these games even, let alone winning some of them, makes a huge difference to where they're going to end up on the table, because not only are you getting more points, but you're probably taking points away from other teams who are going to be challenging you around the mid-table stuff, pushing for top sixes. They've actually just gone through a little run the last month or so where they keep losing in these really close games to teams around them on the table. At least this week, Perth Glory are below them, so they're not pushing for finals, but they still should have beaten them. Like, they were the better team for a lot of that game, despite that being the toughest trip that they have distance-wise, all the way to Perth. And not only are you going over to Perth, and this is actually probably something I was thinking about it watching the Perth game as well, where the amount of, like, it's hard enough to have to do international travel in and out for these games and probably staying for a day or two, getting acclimatized and whatever, living out of a hotel for the weekend, I don't know. But basically every game they play in Australia as well, there's bloody like cooling break midway through every half. Sometimes there's two. Sometimes there's a cooling break every 15 minutes. Like they're also doing it in extreme heat, which doesn't make things any easier at all. So it's a nasty one, but it's very frustrating because the same issues they had last season are the same issues they have in this season. The only difference is that whereas last season, well, the only difference is that it's a different set of players now who are not scoring the goals that they should be for the Phoenix women in these away games, because they did lose a bunch of those players. They did replace them. You know, you got Olivia Ferguson coming and didn't play last year. You got Grace Jale, played for the Phoenix 3 years ago, but didn't play the last couple of seasons. Mania Elliott's consistent enough. Emma Main consistent enough. They were there, part of the team last year. But Anneli Longo, even, who was with the team last season but was injured for a lot of the season, didn't necessarily have as much of an impact. Alyssa Wynnum was out of the team for a lot of last season as well, and she's really come back into contention because Macy Fraser left, basically. Like there are different players, and then maybe this is why this is being repeated, is because different players are now having to learn the rhythms of this as well. But I mean, it shouldn't be. Is experienced enough professionals. It's just, and they're creating enough chances. They're doing enough in these games to win. You have to score while you're on top, the way that Auckland FC do, the way that the Blue Riders do. When they have spells where they break open they get a bit of an advantage in the arm wrestle, they tend to score a goal in those moments. So often it's late in games, like we mentioned, late in games or late in halves. The Phoenix did equalize right before halftime against Perth Glory, and then they started the second half fantastically. Then Perth managed to withstand that 10-15 minute barrage and then steadied it back out and then ended up winning, scoring a goal. Very frustrating way to lose it, where there's just a cross that goes into the middle and your defender hoofs it into the top corner of her own net. It's like, yeah, sometimes it's just it's not working for you, because they remain a very good defensive team, but they're at the moment, probably because they're on a downswing where they're not getting the results to reflect how they're playing. You're starting to see a few more errors like that creep in. I would personally have much preferred if Tiana Jaber just left that and said to Kelly Brown, here, you score that. So, let the New Zealander hoof one into the top corner against her own team and take the glory instead of an own goal. I would have at least enjoyed that. However, I do think Kelly Brown, really nice performance there against the Phoenix. I thought the work she put in, the shift she put in as a lone striker, and coming only I think 2 weeks back from an injury that kept her out for about like 4 or 6 weeks or something like that. Well, she was pretty handy in this game, right before her Football Ferns call up as well. So, well, after the call up, but right before she goes and joins the squad, where she potentially will make a debut next week in Costa Rica. So nice to see that from Kelly Brown. That was cool. At least we take a nice positive from the game. Also, a few more minutes for Ella Jerez as well off the bench. So there was something there. And Anneli Longo continues to be excellent. It's probably part of the reflection of why this team is not scoring the goals they should be, is that their central midfielder is their most creative player. Like Anneli Longo has, I think, 3 goals and 4 assists, which is easily the most combined for the rest of the team. I think it's Liv Ferguson has 3 goals and 2 assists, so she's got 5 goal contributions. Players like, let's say Grace Jale started the season not contributing enough of those, then had scored a couple of those 2 long range goals. She had an assist also, starting to really look like she was finding form. Now she's maybe drifting back a little bit more towards the start of the season. Alyssa Wynnum is someone who she didn't play this game. She was out with a concussion. She's someone who always looks really good up until the last moment. Like, there's just a few too many, maybe. I think Jale and Wynnum are facilitators. So you need to put good finishers around them, and maybe that's something, like, I think Mania Elliott has earned her way into the starting lineup, but I also kind of think they might just be better if you put a better finisher, or someone, not about finishing, but someone who is more of a goal scorer than a setter-upper, and Emma Main out on that wing, perhaps, or even if Main starts ahead of Jale or Wynnum, or something like that. Like, thinking less about talent and ability and form, and a little bit more about profiles and who is going to be, like, who are the goal scorers in this team, because they need more of that. So there are solutions, but unfortunately the solutions aren't really like the kind of It's not really a wave of magic wand thing. It's a bit more like you just have to score that one next time. Next time you have a shot in that position, don't pass, shoot. Make sure you put it in past the keeper. Or just be a little bit stronger or a little bit more selfish or whatever it takes. Like they need to be able to convert their good spells and games into goals better. But they have shown a ability to do that in home games. Like they have been able to do that, and even when it's sometimes come harder than it should, they've tended to capitalize in second halves by just continuing to apply the pressure. And in home games, they're a bit better able to sustain that long term. Whereas, like I said, in the Perth game, really good 15-minute spell after halftime, couldn't sustain it for the rest of the half and ended up conceding and losing. So they do have more home games than away games to follow. They can capitalize on those ones. And if you just sneak one or two other good results away from home in the last, whatever it is, like 6 games or 7 games or something left in the season, that top 6 is still not out of the question. But they've done themselves a bit of damage in the last month just through this run of away games and consistently losing close games where they're better than the result that they end up with.